I was married for almost 30 years, and we have 3 kids. Brooke is 29, Brady 21, and Blake is 17. I'd say they had a really good upbringing. We always supported their activities, whether it was cheerleading or gymnastics or soccer or football, baseball, guitar, whatever the kids really had that passion for. We were really supportive of that. Brady was the easiest kid you could ever raise. When he was born, I mean, he just was almost perfect. He really was always really agreeable, always aimed to please. He was my shadow. Everywhere I would go, he was right there with me. So real happy, and he was always sensitive. He didn't like to get in trouble, but he didn't get in trouble very much, so that worked out okay. But anyway, he was as easy a kid as to raise there ever was. Really strong work ethic. He mowed the lawn without being asked. He always was a gifted athlete. He really excelled in sports. From an early age, he was a gifted athlete, you could tell. Started in golf when he was about 9 or 10 years old, and he ended up being just a really easy kid to raise. He'd stay up late and do his homework and just didn't really talk back. He was just a really easy, agreeable kid. It was right around the time of his 16th birthday. I'd gone to Phoenix for a Chiefs trip, and I'd get a call about midnight, Kansas City time, from Becky saying that Brady had gone to this school dance with his girlfriend, and they were walking out to somebody's car to get some beer out of the car, which I was shocked because he was a really good kid, and found out later, when he was about 15, he had started experimenting and drinking and smoking some pot. But anyway, from that time on, what happened was he had just gotten promoted to the varsity soccer team. They went on and won state that year, and soccer was a huge part of his life, and that was just crushing to him to not get to play the playoffs and win state championship with the varsity soccer team. After that, it really kind of spiraled out of control. He kind of had an attitude that he didn't really have a passion for things as much. The drug use started, and started smoking pot, and then it kind of spiraled out of control. By the time, 7, 8 months later, he had a full-blown heroin addiction. He started on Oxycontin. I know he liked to drink beer, and he liked smoking pot, but the Oxycontin was the one thing that really took his addiction, or took his abuse to addiction, and kind of took him to that next level with drugs. We were crushed, First of all, he just had so much ability and had so much going for him. Real popular, real easygoing. Had all those great qualities you expect out of a kid. I'm sure he would have got a golf and or soccer scholarship somewhere, and so it kind of crushed our dreams too, because you want the best for your kids, and you really see all the potential with your kid, and I think that was a lot of his just shattered dreams, that I thought I could, maybe coach him back to being himself and coach him out of his addictions and things like that, which obviously doesn't work very well. If they're addicted, they're addicted. It doesn't matter how nice you are to them or how supportive you are, they're gonna. The addiction is a lot stronger than anything I can do. But it also caused, bitterness with his sister and his brother. It caused, probably taking sides maybe. I don't know how to explain that the best, but anyway, I think I kind of stayed in Brady's corner, which caused friction with the other kids, obviously, and that's my fault for allowing that to happen, but it did cause a lot of divisiveness in the family. I think one thing that's kind of overlooked is Brady had kind of a daredevil mentality. He was he kind of liked to live in the fast lane. Everything he did to extreme. if it was soccer, golf, running, physical fitness, lifting weights, I'd loan him my Corvette. Once in a while, I found out later he was driving it at 160 miles an hour, so he did kind of like to live to the extreme. And so I think that when you have that kind of daredevil personality, then I think it does make you more prone to experimenting and maybe living on the edge a little bit and trying some things you shouldn't try. I think Johnson County has played a part, and the kids always had everything they needed and then some, and I think that there's a real sense of entitlement here, and I think that played into it. Everybody has kind of the best of everything, and so I think the fact that there's money available, there's drugs available, I think it's inevitable with certain kids that a certain percentage are going to fall into that addiction category as opposed to abuse or just experimenting or whatever. We did a number of things. When we really saw it spiraling out of control, when we finally figured out that he wasn't experimenting, he was a full-blown heroin addict. When he had broken up with his girlfriend, he got fired from his job because he couldn't get up in the morning to go. We had like those three things happen all in 1 week, and we could see that his life had really become unmanageable. So what we did was we talked to some different people, and we got a hold of a addiction rehab center in St. George, Utah. And so what we did is we got a hold of them. We had the intervention done, so a couple of big guys came and got him in the middle of the night, took him to Vegas, drove over to St. George, Utah. Really tough place, where we couldn't even talk to him for the first 30 days. He had to earn a phone call from us. So we went and visited him after about 6 weeks or something like that, and we decided it wasn't the best place for him, so we brought him home and thought maybe he had enough, at least training and some tools to be able to use to beat this addiction and kind of a fresh start. So anyway, found out later that right when he got home, he had some stashed in his room that, so he stayed sober for no time. From there, kind of went back to where he started, and we ended up putting him in Valley Hope in Atchison, Kansas. He did very well in Atchison. It's a 30-day program. It's open doors, so if he wanted to run away, no problem, he can just do it. Or if he wanted to go use, he just wouldn't get back in. But he did. He worked the program and stayed sober for 30 days and made some really, really close friends there, and really good. He had a really good supporting cast, 'cause some of the people were from Kansas City, so when he came home, he started hanging out with those guys and went to AA every night, things like that. And that lasted about 2 weeks, and then, the heroin just pulled him right back in again. And one interesting thing he used to say is, he says, I feel like I have a devil on this shoulder and an angel on this shoulder, and just always got that tug, which way to go. So anyway, like I said, it lasted about 2 weeks, and then he went right back to it. Telling him he's not welcome to live here anymore. So he went and lived with a couple of drug addicts and their baby in KCK. And it wasn't the best part of town. And obviously not a good environment for him to get sober, and he didn't. But anyway, we had a really interesting, I call it a God moment, where I had KU basketball tickets, season tickets that year, and I'd actually given away my tickets for this Tuesday night game, and I forgot to give them to the guys. So anyway, it was about 5 o'clock, and I called Brady and I said, hey, you want to go to the KU game tonight? He goes, yeah. So I went and got him, and we just had a great time. Showed him around campus, showed him, hey, you've had a lot of mistakes in your life, but you could still go to KU, you just be a year late and have a great college life. And I was always that rah-rah trying to get him to look at the future, and I set him up in business one time, and I always believed in him, and I always told him I'll never give up on you. But anyway, this was an interesting time because, like I say, we had a great time at the game. Coming home, he begged me the whole way home to let him come back and live with me and have another chance. I agreed to do that with some certain conditions. So anyway, this was a Tuesday night. By Sunday, I'd figured out that he wasn't living up to the conditions that we had set up for him, and he was right back where he started. He went over to his mom's house and begged her to let him go back to rehab because he says, I really want to quit, but he says, I just can't do it in this environment. So we agreed to move him to St. Louis to a really, really good sobriety. It's called an enthusiastic sobriety program called Crossroads. Most of the kids in there are about his age that are all fighting the same fight. There's about 75 kids in the group. And we took him there on that Tuesday morning, honestly with very little confidence that anything was going to change, and he really surprised us. He hit the ground running. He was ready to change. He actually sobered up and stayed sober for 5.5 months, and he found God along the way, found some really, really, really close friends. He learned to love life again. He was always smiling, always happy. He was back to being himself. You know, he'd call me frequently, and he would always say, I love you, and, you know, just some really, really cool things where I got my kid back, you know, so it was awesome. On the tragic day that it happened, I was actually home that day. I never ever take a weekday off, but I just happened to take a day off that day, and I was kind of washing the hot tub and just doing some piddly things around the house, and the Everland Park cops showed up at my door and told me what had happened, and I couldn't have been more shocked because Brady was doing so well, and so come to find out what happened, it was April 21st of 2010. He was 19 at the time, and I don't think it's any coincidence that the day before is 420, which I think most of the kids know what 420 is, and it was payday, and you know, I'm sure the opportunity was there. We found out later he had hooked up with one of the kids that was formerly in the Crossroads program that had bailed out and went back to addiction. And it was just, like I say, it was just so tragic because I got my kid back, you know, and we got our relationship back, and it was just fantastic. But you know, it's that devil angel thing, you know, that tug is always there, you know, and I've seen kids 3 years later, you know, where they relapse, you know, just because that pull is always there. And I just couldn't have been more shocked because he had truly turned his life around. You know, he made a deal with himself that, you know, he was going to give back, pay it forward, because, you know, there's a lot of new kids that came in the group after he got in the group, and so he took that leadership role upon himself to do everything he could to help the new kids coming in that were struggling, and to use himself as like an example, because he was probably an extreme case on the addiction, and his philosophy was, you know, if I can beat this, then anybody can, you know. And so I was really proud of him for doing that. But I think that it's really easy to get caught up in that. You know, you think that he's cured, and you think that you're not going to have to go down that road again. And you know, what we kind of discovered after the fact was that Brady was a very confident person, and talking to his counselors, they said that, you know, Brady was the type that was, his confidence was probably his demise, because, you know, he had beat this thing for 5.5 months, and I think he was confident enough that, hey, I know how to beat this, so I beat it before, I can do it again, I'm just going to go on a little relapse here. And, you know, underestimating what his body could handle, you know. I mean, when you're an addict and you're using every day, then your body builds up a tolerance to it. you go clean for 5.5 months, then your body really doesn't have that tolerance. And one time was all it took. And so he was hanging around his friends and roommates that night, and they didn't see anything going on, but he went to bed at 8:30 that night, which was really unusual for him because he was a night owl, and never woke up.
Hi, I'm Kelsey Juanes. I'm 19 years old. I graduated high school in 2011. I've always been kind of like go against the grain, like, do my own thing kind of person. Like, whatever anybody didn't want me to do, I wanted to do. I guess like I've always had like a really addictive personality. Like the first time I had a sip of beer, I was like 5 years old and I loved it. I just remember like thinking it was so good and so cool. And I guess like I really started like getting more into like drugs and alcohol when I was like 14. And then the hard drugs and like major addictions started like right as I was like turning 15. The best like I can put my finger on why like the addiction started was like I was never really like okay with like myself, I guess, like comfortable in my own skin. Like I always like felt like just a little bit like different than everybody else. Like, like I was friends with all those people, but I never really like fit in completely. And I think like just like stress of everything and like not feeling okay with myself, like drugs gave me like that escape. And like I was completely comfortable with myself, and like I had fun at parties, and like I was fun to be around, and everybody loved me. And I guess it just like became like just this like mask I could put on, because I didn't necessarily like who I was. Well, obviously, like most kids, I started drinking, and then I moved on to like marijuana. And when I was in 9th grade, I was buying Adderall at school, not even realizing like really what it was. I just knew it was like, oh, it's fun, it makes me happy, and it makes me not eat, so I stay thin. And then right towards like the end of my freshman year, I started hanging out with older kids, and I started using OxyContin. And it wasn't long after that I started. Well, I learned how to inject them instead of just snorting them or whatever. And so when I started like injecting them, I then like quickly found out that heroin was basically the same thing, and it cost less, and I would get more high if I used that. So I started using heroin. And obviously like during all of this, I had tried acid and mushrooms and whatever, and cocaine and all that whatnot. After that, I stuck with heroin for my whole entire drug addiction. Heroin was a constant. And then I also like I then later on I got into meth, and I like thought I was getting clean, and I could not do it. I started using again heroin, and then I also started mixing them or whatever, and that was basically where it ended. So meth, heroin, and cocaine were my big issues. For a long time, my brother was just humiliated that I was his sister, because he was a really like all-American boy, and I was just like, I was not. I was the complete opposite. And on his 18th birthday, he had all of his friends over, and his girlfriend and her family, and everybody. And that was the first night I ever got caught with OxyContin. And during my brother's birthday party, I was being taken down by the police in the front yard and handcuffed, and the whole neighborhood's outside watching, and I'm just like going berserk. And so my brother basically just like shut me out of his life. Like, you are not my sister anymore. Like, do not talk to me. Like, done. And my mom and dad, like, even after I would get caught, they just stuck their heads in the sand. I mean, they just let it all like fly by. It's not happening. And they I think they were embarrassed too, but if they could keep the appearance of like oh, our perfect family, then it would just go away. You know, they didn't have to deal with it; it would go away, and it didn't. And unfortunately, like they, for years, funded my drug addiction. I mean, completely. They knew what they were giving me money for, but I just think that they just didn't want to accept it. And towards the end of it, like when like everybody finally did come to terms with like Kelsey's got a big problem, I lost my family completely. I they just like they wanted nothing to do with me, you know, like they weren't gonna help me. And I mean, I ended up on the streets, just like a total mess, and got arrested again. And they had just had enough, you know, like clearly, you know, letting it, you know, fly by or whatever wasn't working, and they had to put their feet down. The first time I went to rehab actually was right after the whole incident on my brother's 18th birthday, because I was arrested and taken to JDC, where I spent, you know, like 3 nights or something. And directly after that, I was taken, you know, I was walked over to this little rehab for minors called ACT. And honestly, like, when I was in there, I felt like it was just a big waste of time, you know. I hate to say, like, I don't think like NA meetings and AA meetings and do the steps and rehabs and whatnot. I hate to say, like, I don't feel like they work, but they never did for me. And most people who I went to rehab with, especially the second time, because it was adults, it just became new connections for me. You know, everybody was going to say whatever they could to get out of there. And, you know, basically how I felt about it was like, oh great, you know, I'm locked up for however many days, whatever, so my tolerance is just going to go down, so when I get out I can get even more high on less, so this is wonderful. And I just feel like it's just mind over matter. Like, you know, if somebody's going to do it, they're going to do it. If they're not, then they're not. And you know, no amount of NA meetings or whatever is going to really make a person stop if they don't want to. Like, I know my experience with meetings and things like that is just, it's just a bunch of dry drunks or, you know, dry addicts who are, you know, bitching about how crappy it is to be sober and, you know, how much their life sucks. And I mean, it's like, then why bother to get off drugs if this is how you're going to be? Being a girl, and addicted to the kind of drugs I was, is like, I just felt so alone, like, just so, like, different. Because, I mean, the people I was using with wasn't even, like, boys in my grade. It was, like, you know, 40-year-old men who, you know, were just creeps. So, but it's definitely a lot different. I lost every single one of my friends. Everyone. Done. Nobody, I don't blame them, but nobody would talk to me, period. I mean, unless it was like, hey, do you know where to get this drug? You know, and I threw away everything. I mean, every single friend, every single relationship, my high school years, I threw it all away. I definitely think, like, being in Johnson County, like, everybody, like, loves to pretend like in our area that they have this perfect family with the perfect jobs and their perfect cars and their, you know, cookie cutter, whatever. But it's, in our reality, like, living here, like, it's just such a joke to me. Like, you know, nobody has that perfect family. Everybody has secrets that they hide and things they sweep under the rug. And, like, it's especially difficult being here and, like, being how I was, because it's like, you know, when everybody is like, well, you can't hang out with Kelsey and you can't do this and she's bad and blah, tisk, tisk, tisk. And it's like, but nobody stopped to understand, like, she's hurting. Like, let's figure out what the problem is. Like, it's okay. Like, we can help you. Instead, like, everybody just cut me off because I didn't fit that mold anymore. And I just think that it's sad. Well, I mean, it's sad what I was doing. Like, it's bad. I know I dug my own grave. But it's even sadder how people treated me. Like, I was just, like, diseased. And like I understand why they didn't want to hang out with me, but they didn't have to act how they did. And like parents didn't have to say the things to my mom that they did about me. Like my mom knew I was, messed up. She didn't need 50 other moms telling her. On October 8th, I'll have 1 year off drugs. I personally, I know some people can't, but I still drink. I don't limit myself to, I'm not going to go anywhere where they serve alcohol, and I'm not going to be around anybody who drinks alcohol. Because I just think that that's just putting yourself in a box. And the world is not like your little bubble of sobriety. You have to face real life someday. And so many people get trapped in that, just like horrified of anything. And you can't live like that, I started using meth again with a guy I had known who lived in Gardner, and this was like a week or two before my 18th birthday, and my parents had decided that it was going to be like 3 days after my birthday that I was going to go to rehab, and I kind of just went along with it so they didn't take my car away and stuff like that. But in my head I was just like, like I'm going to turn 18 and be gone and you guys can't do anything about it. And it was a week before my birthday, and I was just like, you know what, guys, like, I'm not going to rehab. Screw you. I'm going to move out now. And they were like, fine, pack all your shit. Sorry, pack all your stuff, and you can't have your car, but you can leave right now. Goodbye. So I was like, awesome. See you later. And I had like 50 bags with me, of like all my stuff that I'm really trying to carry around. And I ended up going to Gardner to the people's house who I bought meth from, and things just went from like bad to worse like really quick. And it's kind of just a blur because I had been up for 6-7 days with no sleep, no food, and I'm already like, I'm about to crash. And anyways, I ended up somehow back in Olathe at some kid's house, some kid's mother's house, in like a really like an area that I didn't even know we had this bad of like areas in Olathe. And it was just a mess. I mean, the lady was like in bed, like with sores all over herself, and like she was upset because I had drugs and she didn't, and she wanted them, and it was her house, so she was gonna have them. And I don't really know what happened. I just know that some woman from Kansas City ended up there too, and she was very scary and clearly addicted to drugs. And it ended up with them, the two of them, picking up kitchen knives and basically like chasing me through this house, like telling me about how they're gonna kill me. And I mean, I'm sure it seemed a lot worse to me at the time. And I like went outside and I'm like banging on the neighbor's door, like, call the cops, I'm gonna get killed. And but by the time I realized like what's going on, like I have drugs, I have the pipe, it's mine, and the police are coming. And I was like, oh my God. And it's the day before my 18th birthday, and I like run inside to like get my bags, and I like set the pipe down, and I don't know like if what happened to it, honestly. I don't know if they took it because they wanted the drugs and didn't know the police were coming. But the police came and they didn't believe my story of, I don't know what was going on. I was just woken up out of my sleep and they were using drugs. And I was arrested. The lady from Kansas City was arrested. The mother of my friend was arrested. He was released to his grandma. And anyways, they call my dad because I'm still 17. And they tell him the situation, and my dad was like, just take her to jail. Just take her away. And like in my head, I'm like, oh my God, like meth is a felony. I'm turning 18 tomorrow. Like I'm screwed. And the police could not find the pipe, couldn't find any of the drugs. So I got really lucky. But at that point, I like crashed and woke up in detox. And I was like, where the hell am I? Like, I don't even know how I got here. And then a couple days later, I ended up in rehab. So, yeah, that was probably the lowest point of the whole thing, or just like the whole like, like people use drugs recreationally, and like they always say like that you're like a junkie when you're sitting in your basement alone, getting high by yourself, and like I seriously like I was by myself in my garage doing drugs all the time. And I think that was probably like one of the lowest points, like the biggest realizations of like, I have nobody. Like, you know, I was just like, my parents will probably find me dead on their garage floor some morning with a needle in my arm because I've overdosed. And I was like, and it was sad because I honestly at that point I did not care. Like if I died, at least I died doing drugs, and that made me happy. So
my wife's name is Jean Crossland, and I have 4 sons, Travis, Drew, Nick, and Dallas. That's pretty much our family. Drew's personality, he always ran with a whole large crowd of people, very outgoing. He was the kind of guy that was, he'd bring home stray cats, stray dogs. That was pretty much his nature. Probably when he was around 16 years old, somewhere in that neighborhood, he played soccer, and his junior year was the last year he played. He decided not to do it anymore.
Drew was a real risk taker. He was rollerblading, inline skating.
Some of the group that he hung out with were into some other things, and he did as well. He made bad choices himself, but that's when we first had any problems. It was primarily alcohol at that time.
One girl at a party, it was a party where no parents were there, called us and said, I think you need to take Drew to the hospital. He's only 16. And I guess the kids were daring each other to drink alcohol. And we went and picked him up from the friend's house and rushed him to the hospital. And the doctors took care of him as I heard him screaming down the hallway.
It affected us, considerably because, for one, he was in total denial most of the time that he was involved with it, and I mean, we'd catch him and see him with it, and he was moving back and forth from living at home to living outside the home, and then having to come back home. And he actually came back home, and it was my wife, Jean, who actually did the detox on him because he was already over 18 at the time. And I guess maybe getting into another area, but I urge anybody that, that it's better to catch this as early as possible, because once someone's considered an adult, you can't force them into any kind of treatment. And he refused any treatment, and she did the detox here. So that was about a 4 or 5 month long ordeal, and it was pretty hairy.
But I had no idea that he was taking drugs for a long time. There's really no stigma or profile of a family. Back in the 70s, it was the hippies and long hairs, and you just don't even know about your neighbor anymore.
Wondered, questioned myself, were things I'd done or hadn't done that maybe I could or couldn't have done. Didn't ever sleep well at night, especially when he was out, because didn't know what I might hear on the other end, or that he'd gotten involved in, or been in a wreck, or got hurt, or something like that.
We had just gotten back from the lake. We were visiting Grandma and Grandpa. And we got home, I took a shower, and I got a phone call at 11 o'clock at night. And all I could understand was blue, CPR, and St. Joe's Hospital. So I grabbed George and I said, come on honey, we gotta go, Drew's in the hospital. So we got there and our neighbors brought the other ones up. And they were literally on top of him, shocking him, cutting his clothes off. And I just stared. I didn't know. Didn't know what to do, So then they put him in ICU and they intubated him. And as we found out, he had no brain waves then. We lost Drew about 6 years ago to alcohol poisoning. Well, it just killed me. I mean, I have 3 other boys and I have to keep going on, and I have like a wall in front of me. My doctor said, it's amazing how well you're doing. And I think about him every day, all day. And it's always been Jeannie and her 4 boys. I still always will have 4 boys.
Miss him every day. I think that pretty much says it. Whew. Didn't expect that, but it happens, and that's what happens to me. I'll hear a song, or something will come up, or something will happen. In fact, the 27th of June is the 6th anniversary, so I think I just pretty much explained it from my reaction.
Don't be in denial. You know, I mean, as perfect as Brady was, yeah, I could never in my wildest dreams imagine that he would go down that path. But take action early. Don't be afraid to take action. Don't be afraid to take strong action. I don't want this to sound like a commercial, but Crossroads is the greatest program in the world for kids struggling with addiction. So I think when you do finally realize that they've crossed that line from abuse to addiction, take action early and get them into a great program like that where they can find better things to do than drugs. Enthusiastic sobriety groups are great. Read the right books. You know, there's a book called Beyond the Yellow Brick Road, and I think that book is far and away the best book that anybody could read to learn about addictions and to see some things and learn how to handle situations that come up. And the other thing that is a lot easier said than done is to not make their problem your problem. You know, the screaming and yelling doesn't work. You know, it just creates friction in the household. But you know, it's called detach with love. So you know, make sure they know you love them, but also make sure you know that they know that you don't support what they're doing and you're not going to allow them. I would say Oxycontin, Xanax, some of those. I think that'd be outlawed personally. I think they're highly addictive. I think that a lot of sports injuries can lead to addictions. You know, you get started on those pills, and you know, like Oxycontin to me is just manufactured heroin. You know, and what we found is that Oxycontin is about $30 a pill. You know, on the streets, and after a while, it gets pretty expensive. So I think most kids that get addicted to Oxycontin, they figure out that they can do heroin and get the same effect for a lot less money. And that to the drug manufacturers, you know, I don't know that you can stop that, but I think that the best thing that law enforcement can do is to look really close at what's being prescribed to who, what doctors are over-prescribing. Go after those doctors, go after the source. You know, and I don't know where these kids get all these pills, but I'm assuming they probably get them from doctors or pharmacists. But to me, that's the most feasible thing to do, is come down hard on pharmacies and doctors that over-prescribe, and that'll go a long ways right there.
Wow. Again, the age thing has become such a tough issue. I guess let's go back early on. Maybe when we first saw the signs, went ahead and put him into something at that time when he was still in high school. It's a little hard because you never know. It's hard to see the future and know what road it's going to go down. But what I will say, afterwards it's too late. So you're better off to take the strongest. Don't ever think of it as being too strong an action early, because you can't make up for it later.
I would say start in about 6th grade and educate your children about drugs and what they do to the body, instead of acting like, don't say anything, they might, want to try them. If they have a relative that has experienced something like that, talk to them. But basically, George and I want to educate parents to teach their children about how drugs can kill you.
It's actually a fact that 60% of the opiates that are produced in the world are consumed in the United States. So I think that tells you quite a bit. I think it's all about the money. The guys that write scripts, and I know they do it in Florida's a big place for it. They ought to be in prison. as far as I'm concerned. I think that the other thing though is there's a lot of it's picked up by just going through people's medicine cabinets. I know initially a lot of the thought was through parents' medicine cabinets, but I've found that one of the real premier places is grandparents' medicine cabinets. So I think the biggest thing there is, lock the stuff up. If you had a tooth pulled and they gave you 30 and you've taken 2 and put the other 28 in, don't get rid of them. They're going to put the Regional Prevention Center and the Sheriff's Department's putting up a permanent box at the courthouse in Olathe where you can get rid of discard the pills. So it's a safe place to get rid of them. You shouldn't flush them down the toilet because we don't want them in the system, the water system, because then becomes an issue too. So
I know myself, a whole lot of doctors who will not prescribe OxyContin. They have had it with the kids, but there are many, many around the U.S. that will, and they make a lot of money. A lot of people get an addiction to OxyContin, so they might go in an emergency room and say, my back hurts, and the doctor will just write them a script. And a lot of things, not children, teenagers are doing in high school is going to other people's houses, and even a friend of a friend will go into the parents' bedroom to go to the bathroom, but they'll search through their cupboards for any narcotics or any type of prescription drugs.
Where are you today with Drew's?
Oh, I'm here. I think about him all day, and I'm glad that George and I are talking to people about Drew. I try not to think about it a lot, but when I do, it's just like a knife in your stomach. It's horrible. It's the worst thing a parent could ever experience.
Do you have anything else you want to add?
Let's see. I know as an adult, sometimes we're bad role models. Our kids are all, we'll all go to Pizza Hut, after soccer party. Have a soccer party there, and the adults would be drinking beer, and the kids would be eating pizza and pop, and we drive them home. We know how much alcohol we can have that won't bother us, but that's a real bad role model.
All right.
For any parents, I would say, just pull your heads out of your asses. Your kids are in high school, and yes, oh my God, even though they're on honor roll and in orchestra or something, they're probably getting high. If you think they're getting high, they probably are. Doesn't matter how good your kid is, because I was a pretty good kid before this. Just don't be so oblivious. Try to talk to your kids about it without being threatening. Because I know that my parents, I felt threatened a lot when they would talk to me, and it would just cause an explosion. Don't be afraid to, my parents called the police on me numerous times. Don't be afraid to do that, because if you keep on letting your kids act that way or do those things, it's just going to harm them in the long run. So hey, this one's for you, Mom. I have a lot to say. You're an intelligent woman, Mom, beautiful in every way. You taught me to go to church, Mom. You taught me wrong from right. But I always went against the grain, Mom. I would always put up a fight. I know it broke your heart, Mom, to see me act this way. But I thought I'd be okay, Mom, because tomorrow is a new day. You told me those kids were bad, Mom. I knew it made you cry. To see me act this way, Mom, to listen to me lie. But it was just a little weed, Mom. It wasn't all that bad. But the beer sure tasted awful, Mom, till I forgot how many I had. I knew you were fed up, Mom. You grounded me from time to time. But I really didn't care, Mom. I wanted my life to be mine. It wasn't too long after, Mom, that my friends wanted to go big. It was the first time ever, Mom, that I held that powerful rig. It was truly amazing, Mom, the feelings that I felt. I know you said it was bad, Mom, but I liked the card I was dealt. I know it broke your heart, Mom, to see me fall so low. But all I cared about was me, Mom. I was blinded by the dope. Please know that I felt bad, Mom. It hurt somewhere inside. To know that people were giving up, Mom, after all the years they tried. So what went through my mind, Mom? Thinking I was fine. I must have been really fucked up, Mom, to think my life was mine. My life belonged to drugs, Mom. I was a needle's slave. I'm slowly drowning in this hell, Mom, but you taught me to be brave. I'm trying to fight my demons, Mom, but it looks like I might lose because they're much bigger than me, Mom, and power is what they ooze. So I'm sitting here alone, Mom, trying not to cry. The needle is here too, Mom, ready to make me fly. But before I blast off, Mom, a thought comes to my head. What if this is it, Mom? What if this one knocks me dead? The question makes me think, Mom, about all the times we used to share, and even when we fight, Mom, you'd try to make it fair. Before I found drugs, Mom, you were my best friend. I know that I lost that, Mom, and only time will mend. I regret it every day, Mom, for choosing the life I live. But I only blame myself, Mom. I took all you had to give. I wish I would have listened, Mom, and opened up my heart, but instead I chose my own path, Mom. I chose to not be smart. You started to give up, Mom. Your daughter was taken by dope. So you bowed your head and prayed, Mom. God was your last hope. The power of prayer worked, Mom. God was knocking at my heart. I started to wake up, Mom. I wanted a new start. A miracle was happening, Mom. I was no longer a slave. Trapped by Satan, Mom, who would take me to my grave. The road that lies ahead, Mom, has demons I will fight. There are temptations all around me, Mom. But with sobriety, I see the light. Addiction is sneaky, Mom, not something that I planned. Drugs rip apart your life, Mom. I can tell you that firsthand. I owe it to your prayers, Mom. I'm dedicating my life to God. I still have a long way to go, Mom. I'm still extremely flawed. It was cool to see a miracle, Mom, unfold before our eyes. Your daughter is off drugs, Mom. She is learning to be wise. So I'm sitting in my room, Mom, writing a poem for you. I hope it was insightful, Mom. I hope you saw my view.